Welcome to the MMA Junkie Rankings Report for November 19th, 2019. My name is John Morgan, Rankings Chair. Gorgeous George Garcia is with me as always. And of course, UFC on ESPN Plus 22 in Sao Paulo, Brazil. That was the predominant card in terms of rankings movement. Not necessarily the most exciting fight card of all time, but in the main event, Jan Blachowicz did pick up a split decision win over Jacare Souza. And you did reward him with a little bit of a bump. He goes from number 15, slides up to number 12.
He does, and the reason is because his body of work over the years. He's won 7 of his past 8. He has won 2 in a row. 2 of them have been against guys coming up from middleweight, but they're solid fighters at the same time. So the same way we're going to reward the Smiths and Marreta Santos, who are also coming up and doing work, we reward these guys for coming up because they bring a body of work from middleweight. So there's just some stock there. Alexander Rakic has every right to go. Why is he passing me? Because he's 12-1 overall. I think 4-0 in the UFC, coming off a vicious KO of Jimmy Manuwa. But that's it. After Manuwa, there's a little bit of a drop in the opponent's level that he's had. And Manuwa went on to retire. Blachowicz also has a win over Manuwa. So I took more of a body of work and cruised him past Shogun and Rakic. And yeah, we're going to place and Ilir Latifi, who's moving up to heavyweight, but I didn't take that into consideration. It's just he's been on a little bit of a down.
Yeah, I want to ask you one quick question on Jan, because I don't know if I necessarily say it was a controversial decision. It was just there was so little to score in the fight that I understand if people had rounds the other way. So when you look at a result like that, where maybe you're not 100% sure if the result is right or wrong, I mean, how much of an impact does that have in the movement you make?
Yeah, sometimes it'll sit with me a little bit, but like I say, he had the win. It was in hostile territory of Brazil. That guy pretty much could campaign for a title shot along with Corey Anderson, Dominic Reyes, because, again, his body of work is really, really nice. So I gave him basically the win, the stock of the win, coming off the win over Rockhold in the summer. And then, again, even though he dropped that fight to Santos, who went on to fight John Jones, right before that he had a nice 5-0 run in the UFC. So 25 wins overall. I think he deserved that bump.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's talk
about Rakic has a fight coming up, and he can earn that spot back.
I was going to say, let's talk about the flip side of that. Jacare Souza, we were kind of an interesting spot there, what to do with Jacare. Ultimately, we decided to go ahead and leave him in the middleweight rankings for the time being, although, of course, he does take a slide. He goes from number 7 all the way down to number 11 behind Darren Till. Talk about the decision there to leave him in at 185 for the time being.
Because we've seen it in the past where fighters say, you know what, I want to try something new. It's either the diet or the rehydration, blah, blah, blah. And maybe I'm sure some of that is true. But at the same time, usually they're kind of like phased out of a certain division, out of being a title contender. They know that they're going to have to take on, the number 15 guy or someone coming out of the, honorable mentions. And they don't want to put someone over, to use a pro wrestling term. So they'll say, hey, let me give this a shot. To go up in weight class and see how that goes. We've also seen them come right back down. We've seen it with Kevin Lee recently. And because we've been doing this for a long time, had Souza given us the type of data, like you were telling us earlier, John, off camera, hey, man, they have to pick me up, out of the sauna, and I'm just depleted, my kidneys. Maybe something like that would lead us to believe that this is permanent, but I think he's probably going to move back. I think Weidman and Rockhold aren't done with middleweight either. I might be wrong, but until then, we're going to keep his spot there because he's got an incredible body of work, but we can't hold his place. He's got to drop below the other guys that are out there, and they're doing work, including Derek Brunson, who he has a win over, but we just can't hold your place, and I thought right below Till, who had an incredible middleweight debut, was a perfect spot for him.
Makes sense. All right, the co-main event, a split draw, Paul Craig and Mauricio Shogun, who are the legend there, of course. I personally, to be honest with you, I thought Shogun won the fight, but it's a draw. That's what we end up with. So neither a win or a loss for Shogun, but you did give him a little drop here. And it's funny, he goes from number 13 to number 15, and he slips behind a guy name that you've been mentioning quite a bit here, Alexander Rakic.
Yeah, Mauricio Shogun, who got the draw. So he didn't win and he didn't lose, but he just hasn't been doing well as of late. Even in his wins, he just takes a bit of a beating. And sometimes I feel like when the others are winning, they're making statement wins. I think who was kind of like in cruise control on when he comes to the finish line. But he's tumbling out, and I think we've seen the best of him. He had about a 4-fight run, if I'm not mistaken, about a year and a half ago, and he was right there to maybe climb back in the top 10, but things just haven't really been impressive for him. So it's not a win, it's not a draw, so I think we have the ability to have some movement there.
Yeah, I mean, he's on the tail end of his career. There's no question about it. And I think, honestly, I hate to say it, but I think that was in Paul Craig's hands. I think he made the mistakes more so than even Shogun, dug it out. So, all right. Big story, I think, to be honest. Maybe not the one coming in, but Charles Oliveira at lightweight. He came in at number 13. He picks up a very, very impressive win. He bumps up only a couple spots to number 11, but let's be honest, 155 is a very, very tough division to move up in. But, man, this guy is lining up for some big fights. Talk to me about Charles Oliveira. And, 9 years into his run in the UFC, it feels like now he's kind of hitting his stride and maybe in some 30. Big fights. That's crazy.
He's still only 30. Look out for him to maybe break some of Cerrone's records. All right, so Oliveira is similar to Blachowicz. He's just been doing work. He's been racking up some wins. He did lose to Paul Felder about 5 fights ago or whatever, and that's why that was part of his call-out. But since then, he's just looked amazing. And this was a statement win in front of the Brazilian crowd. I think he's maybe on the cusp or maybe already becoming a Brazilian superstar. Maybe he's doing Good Morning Brazil today as we speak. Who knows? But Charles Oliveira is going to move past Conor McGregor, who's continuing to slide, because if you're not dropping fools, we're dropping you. And Edson Barbosa's lost 4 of his past 5. So he's a stud, and I like the fact that, I think Trinaldo was calling him out. So a few of these guys know, hey, look, to stay relevant, I got to fight relevant fighters. But he's lost 4 of his past 5, whereas Oliveira is streaking upward. Now, he has to stop behind Islam Makhachev because he's 18-1, and he's really, really streaking. So that's why we kind of had to put the brakes on him right there. But that little move, I think, is good for Oliveira.
Yeah, Trinaldo calling him out. You mentioned the name Makhachev. I think that would be a fight that maybe not the sexiest matchup on paper, but a heck of a fight. Saw some people throwing out the name Kevin Lee as well for Charles Oliveira.
Oliveira, put him up against anyone. I'm in. I really loved it. And he, honestly, him versus McGregor would be a fun fight. But the problem is McGregor's just, he's got that high superstar stock. So he's got to be mixed up against those types of names.
No question about it. All right, listen, I know you took a look at a couple of other names as well, but no real big impacts to make. Anybody that you were close to pulling the trigger on this card?
No, not really. The card didn't have much talent in terms of ranked opponents, so that usually happens with the fight night cards. You're usually looking at about anywhere between 5 and 10 fighters. But we've got some pay-per-views coming up. That's where the major movement takes place, so we look forward to that. But last week's Moscow card and this past week, they had some movers or whatever, but nothing to really consider,
Bellator 234 did take place in Israel. It was on tape delay, a one-day tape delay, so a lot of people might have missed that, to be honest with you. Linton Vassell did pick up a win over Sergey Karatanov. That means that we dropped Sergey Karatanov out of honorable mentions. Walt Harris made his way back to the list. Of course, Walt Harris probably not thinking a whole lot about fighting right now, but he's back on the list. Meanwhile, Sinead Kavanaugh did pick up a win in the women's featherweight division, so she cracks the top 10 now with that victory over Olga Rubin. So a little bit of movement over there in Bellator. Meanwhile, this weekend coming up, no UFC, but there is Bellator. There is one championship. LFA is on. Cage Warriors is on. CFFC, all that's on UFC Fight Pass, including, I should say, me and CM Punk on the call at CFFC. And we'll talk about what everything does to the rankings next week in the Rankings Report.